Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
Coaching is an approach to learning and personal and professional growth that creates self-awareness, drives change, and provides much-needed support and an appropriate level of challenge. Some executives have the opportunity to engage professional coaches who are outside of their organization and chain of command and have no loyalties beyond their professional commitment to their clients. And in those relationships, really great things can happen. Unfortunately, the services of these professional coaches are often expensive and available only to the most senior executives or high potential leaders being groomed for the top ranks of an organization. Today, we're talking about how managers can be coaches and bring the benefits of coaching to their team members. We're also talking about how it's a great way to build a deeper relationship with the folks on your team and truly get to know them as people, not just as a means of production. There are all sorts of benefits that can happen when the manager becomes a coach. It humanizes the organization. It creates a more warm and loving environment for the team. In fact, everyone benefits from coaching when managers become coaches. Stick around to learn how all that works.
Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about better business results, stronger teams, more successful careers, and happier lives. Along the way, we hope to bust some biases, build some bridges, and have some fun. We're glad you're here. And now, our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
It's Dr. Mike Patterson, your host of the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about what it takes to be a great leader and how to build great teams. I'm glad you're here with us today. If you like what you hear in the podcast, please subscribe or follow, leave a review, tell a friend. Our ability to reach and help people become better leaders really comes from our network. Our listeners and friends who hear something that's useful to them and they want to share that insight with a friend or colleague, that's how we grow. And that's why we do this, to help leaders and teams elevate their performance, bring out the best in the people around them, and work better together. When you follow us or leave a review, it helps other people find us, and it allows us to spread the good word about good leadership and good teamwork more broadly. I'm excited about today's topic because I'm passionate about leadership and building strong relational leaders. For me, relationships are the essence of leadership. And my guest today is going to help us better understand how we as leaders can go deeper with our people, go deeper with our leadership through coaching. He's a coach himself. He's a master coach, a certified coach, great credentials. But the essence of our conversation today is really going to be about how managers can become coaches without, extreme levels of certification and knowledge. But it's about how to build relationships with people, to help them grow, to work through challenges and barriers to growth, to ask good, provocative questions that get people to think and dig deep. It's based on a level of trust and emotional intelligence that's needed to go to those deeper places, but that's what we're talking about today. Our guest is Jeremiah Shaw. He has a genuine desire to understand other people's stories, explore their challenges, and connect with them and the resources that support their vision. He is all about the power of positivity, and he's an upbeat, joyful guy, and I really appreciate about that about Jeremiah. He enjoys helping his clients clarify and act a full, purposeful life, but defining their value-driven vision professionally, organizationally, and personally. He's got a deep passion for both nonprofits and sales. He possesses a master's degree in organizational and global leadership from York University and a bachelor's degree from the University of Central Oklahoma. I think he's an Oklahoma guy who transplanted himself to Colorado, so now he's a Colorado guy. He's an ACC certified coach. He's an ICF coach. But what I appreciate most about Jeremiah is his heart for people, his heart to serve. Jeremiah, welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And I understand that you are getting over COVID. So you've pulled yourself out of the sick bed to join us today. But I think you're doing pretty well at this point, right?
I am, yeah. I'm on the back end of it. So I've got a little bit of a hoarse in my voice, but I've got a cup of tea here and we'll make it happen.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're able to make it, and I'm glad you're on the mend. Jeremiah, I love origin stories. So let's explore yours a little bit here. How did you find your way to Strata Consulting? What was your journey to get there? How did you develop this passion for coaching? Just tell us a little bit about where you've been and where you are now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think to really understand, I'll go back to my dad, who is a marriage and family therapist. And so he had this natural tendency to go deeper with every relationship he had. And, I'm the oldest of three boys, and my dad and I used to butt heads all the time growing up. And it's always the apple that doesn't fall far from the tree where the most conflict lives. The older I got, I really appreciated my dad's philosophy of life and how to really coach people, not just counsel people. I went on and started doing a lot of volunteer work with nonprofit work. Through that experience, I ended up working in the nonprofit industry for about 7 years with an organization called Young Life. Through that, I learned how to lead people, not just manage people. When you're dealing with volunteers, you can't just tell them what to do. You truly have to listen to them. You have to get curious. You have to ask great questions and set clear vision through strong communication. A lot of those same aspects that lead to a great coach. After that, I went on and actually managed a sales team for 3 years. And I saw the same theme. Money ends up running out of motivation for people. They start recognizing through different seasons of their life, they want something more. And so my style of managing that sales team was really leaning in relationship and figuring out, hey, what do they want and how do we help you get that in life? Most of the time, it didn't revolve around more money. It just revolved around deeper relationships. They wanted meaning and purpose, not just from work, but for their marriage or family or being involved in their community. One of the things I love doing with not just the employees then, but employees now is challenging that idea of if we're working in our community, how are we getting involved in our community just as servant? And so all of those things came through that theme of coaching. I didn't have a name for it or the skill set or the framework to do it. It was just kind of a natural thing. And so as I started looking for something else after my sales career, which was sparked by reading a leadership book by Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last, I read that book and I said, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to consult managers and leaders on how do we enter into a deep relationship with our people. And I fell completely backwards into Strata leadership. I met one of our vice presidents here, and I walked away from that conversation. It was a whole genuine conversation about people and family, which aligns with my value. I remember I walked out of that meeting, I called my wife and said, I don't know what they pay, but I want to work for those people and I'm going to make it happen. And 6 months later, I ended up here, and that was over 5 years ago. I love what I do. I love what we get to do and partnering with people in exactly what I said, which is helping people go deeper in their relationships in their life.
Your comment about your relationship with your dad resonates for me, and I'm reminded of a statement that's attributed to Mark Twain. I'm not sure that he actually said it, and others aren't sure that he actually said it, but it sounds like something Mark Twain would say. He said, when I was 14 years old, my dad was the most ignorant man I'd ever met. And then when I was 21, I was amazed at how much smarter he had become over those 7 years. So I think we often appreciate our parents and our fathers in particular as we're a little older, and it sounds like that's the case with you. Tell us a little bit about Strata leadership, Strata Consulting, and what you do. You're the president, I believe, at this point of Strata Consulting. So you joined them 5 years ago. Now you're running the show. What's Strata Consulting all about?
Absolutely. Our mission is to elevate life at work. We stop the sentence there, but it goes a lot deeper because what we're really trying to do is impact people for generations, not just professionally, but personally as well. And so that's really our why of what we get to do. How we do that is through organizational development. So we provide organizational development consulting. We do a lot of executive coaching. What I am passionate about, which we'll talk about more today, is helping leaders become coaches, not just hiring executive coaches. And then we do a lot of out of the box trainings. We're based out of the heartland of America, which is Oklahoma, which is where as you said, I was born and raised. Before I transplanted, my wife wanted to be a little bit closer to family, and I wanted to be closer to skiing. So we made that happen through the COVID era. And we service clients nationally, and we love what we do, getting to partner with people for their people.
So you said you're passionate about helping leaders become coaches or leverage coaching in their leadership. Why is coaching so important to humanize the workplace? I think some workplaces have become less human over time, and some might say that the transition to a more remote, distant, virtual workplace has contributed to that. How does coaching combat that?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. COVID changed a lot of things for specifically middle management. When we look at attrition rates these days and what employees are asking for, what we see on our end is an employee's asking for more than ever. And the employers are also promising more than ever. So you have these very high expectations from both sides, which typically doesn't end well in a relationship unless there's strong communication, unless we're being strategic about how we're designing that relationship. And so what's important about coaching these days is I genuinely believe, one, it's not a magic bullet. I don't want to oversell coaching, but it is a tool that I think every leader to be successful in this day and age needs to add to their toolbox. And when I say that, it's giving a gift to a leader to understand relationship in a deeper way. And so I think one of the quickest ways to understand what coaching is understanding what coaching isn't, because I think we joke about how coaching these days is the wild, wild west. Everybody has a different definition of coaching. Everybody has a different way of doing coaching. We adhere by the International Coaching Federation standards, which is also known as ICF, which I encourage all the listeners to check into that. They have a lot of great resources to do that. Coaching engages employees in a different way from what coaching is. So I always say coaching is not mentoring. Mentoring is about somebody who's done it before them and understands how to do it well. And I think everybody should have a mentor, but that's not a coach. I always use the example of banking about how if you go back 20 years ago and look at how banking was being done 20 years ago versus how it's done now, that mentor is going to have a lot of gaps in their mentorship between themselves and that mentee. On the same tune, coaching is not consulting. Coaching is not about showing up and telling you how to do it. As adult learners, we learn from our self-awareness and self-exploration and self-discovery. And so what we try to do is not lead them with a carrot or learning lessons over for them, but we help lead them in a way where they get to be the learner in a really special way, where we're not telling them how to do it. So we are consultants. It's also not therapy. Like I said, my dad was a therapist. He and I get to have this conversation all the time, the differences between therapy and coaching. Therapy really sets people up to understand really why do they operate the way they do now based on their past. And coaching doesn't focus on the past. It's forward thinking only. It's also not managing. Managing is about processes and procedures and expectations and metrics and saying, this is how you do it. This is how I need you to do it. And no exceptions, if, ands, or buts. And the beauty about coaching is it believes that the employee and the coachee, as we call them, has something inside of them that's expansive, that's genuine, that there's innovation within that employee that I don't even recognize as their manager. And through relationship and coaching skills, I can extrapolate that not only for the organization, the bottom line, that's the ROI and the financial means and understanding of coaching. But the reality is, if we're viewing people as human, I want what my employee wants. And I want them to understand and state, what do you want out of this job here? What are your expectations for this job? How do I reset the expectations in a healthy way so we can deliver what they need and they can deliver what we need, at the same time understanding they want to get somewhere in life. And as their employer, I believe it's our responsibility to partner with them in a way where we get to show up, not in a transactional way, but a transformational way. And coaching has a lot of skill sets that just reinforce that idea.
You know, I saw a quote this week by Colin Powell, the Army general and the great leader that he was in the military and in government. He said leaders are problem solvers, but as a leader coach, how does the leader help their coachees, the people they're coaching, come up with solutions to problems? Is Powell right in saying that leaders are problem solvers, but is there a unique way that coaching helps us solve problems?
100%. I love that quote. And there's deep truth there in coaching. When I'll think, the story that comes to mind is 2019 before COVID. Uh, I had an employee that I had just hired, very brilliant man. He's an IO psychologist. He kept coming into my office and bringing problems to me. And he'd bring the problem to me. We'd think through solutions. And one day, as we started really getting deeper and exploring this coaching idea, I started shifting it on him of saying, my job as your boss is not to solve the problem every single time. It's to help you think through it.
Hmm.
And so what I started trying to do is reflect back the problem, clarify the problem, and then send him out of my office to become self-reliant with autonomy and ownership. And by telling him, hey, I believe you actually have a better solution than I do, it opened up this expansive world for this individual where they would now walk into my office, not with a problem, but one or two or three solutions that I didn't even have to think about. So what it did is it created and maximized our reach as an organization. And it made him not relying on myself, but more self-reliance. It gave him autonomy and self-confidence and self-awareness. And it was just a really neat moment. And so through that, yes, to answer your question, I truly believe what he's saying in that quote rings true for coaching of we're replicating ourselves as leaders. And a leader's job is to be a problem solver, but it's not our only job.
Yeah,
It's to replicate ourselves.
and that story you used to illustrate that encounter with your new employee, the outcome of that is the employee leaves feeling affirmed,
Mhm.
empowered, engaged in finding the solution, probably energized by the collaboration with you, his leader, uh, hopefully safe and using you as a sounding board and encouraged and stimulated when you offer provocative sort of prompts to his thinking and inviting him to go to the next level with his thinking. That seems like a very winning situation and relationship.
Absolutely. And that's the ROI I talk about when I meet with organizations and talk through why is it important for managers and leaders to have these resources? Because that saves me time. Every time that employee doesn't come into my office, it saves me time. At the same time, from a human level, that employee walked away with a deeper engagement with our organization and they're happier. They're bringing their best. They have more purpose. And the coaching program I actually went through several years ago, one of the facilitators continually came back to the idea that a leader's job is to expect to be amazed from their employees. And when we set that tone in the relationship with them, it opens up capacity in our employees that they didn't even know was there. We say at Strata Leadership that workplace coaching is really about activating and aligning an employee for the sake of the organization. And I go a step farther that it's also for the sake for their life as well.
Yeah, I love that. And your comment around a good coaching relationship and sort of expanding the capacity of your employee actually saves you, the manager, time, sort of flies in the face of what some people, what some leaders might say is that, all this interaction and coaching stuff and all the lengthy conversations, it's a lot faster for me to just tell someone how to do it, because I've done it 20 times before and I've tried and made errors, and now I know the right way to do it. So let me just tell you and save you a lot of time. That's that's not your point at all. It may be a little more time up front, but it's an investment for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned earlier I moved out of Oklahoma to Colorado. We live in a town. It has a question mark on the population sign, by the way, and it's a little cow town, which was always a dream to live in a small place. Fortunately, we have very fast internet, so I get to work remote for the most part. But my son started going to this he started going to this very small school. My son is 10. He'll be 10 years old in 2 weeks. And he started noticing on the way to school these men who would ride these horses chasing cows. I mean, we are in cow town. And he said, I want a hat, Dad. I want a cowboy hat and a belt buckle. So my wife later that week took him into town and came back home. He had a big American flag belt buckle that he wears every single day. This was 6 months ago, probably. And the next morning, he came in my bedroom. I had just gotten out of the shower, hadn't had my coffee yet. He comes in and says, "Hey, Dad, I can't figure my belt buckle out." And I said, "Well, show me how you're trying to do it." So he showed me, and he's trying to go underneath it, and that wasn't working. And I said, "Well, show me another way. What's another way to do that?" So he tries to go over it. That doesn't work. And I said, "Well, try one more time." So we're 3 or 4 minutes into this conversation, and I really just want my coffee. But instead of showing him in that moment, I kept asking him these questions of, let's increase your critical thinking here. Let's figure this out so you don't come back to me the next morning. Because as parents, we've all done that. We tell our kids one thing, and then 4 or 5 more times they come back to us and ask us how to do the thing. And so the final time he gets it right, he's like, "Well, would you look at that?" And so in that moment, I spent more time on the front end, but that's the only time he's asking for help with his belt buckle. And it's the same thing with our employees of how do we show them that they're innovative and creative, increase their engagement, where instead of me having to help them problem solve, all I'm doing as a manager, because I'm responsible for the final decision, is saying, "Hey, I like your 3 solutions here. Let's go with solution 2. What do you think?" "Yeah, okay, let's go."
Yeah, that's a great example, and I think our kids were often maybe most tempted to jump in and just do it for them with our kids when it's so important to let them find the answer for themselves. Your story kind of reminds me of an old expression I heard years ago, and I don't know who originated it, but the expression is sometimes you got to slow down to speed up.
Mhm.
And you took the time, you slowed down with your son, and like you said, he hasn't come back with that question again. He's on to bigger and better things, and that's exciting. Now, eh, Jeremiah, I've heard you say that growth is created through understanding purpose, values, direction, and action. And I may not have that exactly right, but tell us what you mean by this and how managers can incorporate these pillars, purpose, values, direction, and action into their coaching relationships.
Right, yeah, I think those are just kinda some character traits of great coaching, of really trying to figure out what does the employee want. So when I meet with somebody, well, to break coaching down and simplify it, what coaching is asking somebody, "What do you want? Where are we at? And what's the journey between those 2 things?" And within that journey comes purpose, because I'm asking the employee, what do you want outside of just a professional setting? And so I'm figuring out through that, well, what do they want? And through their purpose, I'm figuring out how to integrate, well, what are their values? Well, what are the organization's values? And if those aren't aligned, it's not a fit to begin with, right? And so what we're trying to do is align the values between the person and the organization. And then through that, we're activating them of saying, this is the organization I am loyal to, I'm excited about. I'm sitting over a coffee or beer with my friends and saying, you've got to hear what my employer's doing for me. When in reality, it's a partnership. And so through coaching, we're getting to do that with the employee by just getting to know them as a person. What motivates them? What are their values? What do they live for? What do they want out of this thing we call life? And as their manager and boss, how do I enter into that with them as a true partner? Not just squeezing them for the sake of quarterly earnings, but truly listening to them and understanding what they want. And my responsibility is, how do I get them there? I tell my team, anytime I hire a new employee, my promise, and it's been this for about 10 years, I don't even know where I picked it up, probably from my dad at some point, is if you come work with me, my promise and my metric for failure or success with you is, if you leave here healthier than when you came here, that's a win for me. And my goal is to develop people in such a way that work here at Strata that they want to stay. But are they better equipped to go find something outside of Strata? Heck yeah. But we're treating people in such a way that they want to stay. And that's what we challenge our clients to do as well.
I guess based on what you just said, coaching is a means by which people become stronger, healthier, and better
Yes.
in that relational setting. So, Jeremiah, you have invested your life in coaching. You've studied it academically. You've achieved several high level certifications. You've mastered your craft. But can anyone coach? If I'm a new manager, I've been leading people for a while, but I haven't even really comprehended what this whole coaching thing is, but I'm intrigued today by this conversation. How do you become a coach? If I'm a small business owner, I own a dry cleaners, I'm a small restaurant guy, I'm a franchisee. Can I coach? How does that all happen? How do you develop coaching skills as a frontline leader?
Great question. And to set the record straight, I think, my style of coaching is that I don't know everything. And that's what I love partnering with clients. I learn something new every time we get on a project with clients. And every time I coach a client, every session I walk away with a new lesson as a coach. And so I have a long ways to go. But to answer your question is, yes, coaching is very, very simple. Coaching is about three things, which I kind of call the coaching 101s. If this is all we do as a manager or a leader or a franchise owner, you're winning. And this is called coaching. So there's three things to really lean into and maybe understand is, how do you have deep curiosity for just where your employees are? How do you have curiosity for what they're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis? How do you just have a curious spirit as their manager? What if we as managers and leaders, we entered into in a humble posture that we don't know everything, and that's why we hire people to help us with that. And so what if I was curious? And because of that curiosity, I ask great questions. So that's the second thing. How do we ask great questions to our employees? And there's a rule of asking questions, which is, don't ask why questions. They did brain scans, and the word why evokes this defensive response and actually triggered our fight or flight response. It's a defensive mechanism. So when you're sitting across that employee in your office and say, hey, why did you do that this way? Even if you're genuinely trying to understand. So what I say is, start challenging yourself every day. Ask the question starting with the word what. what about that decision was important to you? What about that decision seemed like the right direction to you? It's much less defensive, and you really get to the root of where people are headed. So remain curious, ask great questions. And the third thing is listen. And I'm not even talking about a conversation where you're listening. I'm talking about a dialogue where we're getting to hold a problem or a situation out in front of both parties. And we get to truly lean in and understand, what are they saying behind just the words? What are they saying through their body language? What might be going on at their home life that they're not saying, that's impacting the quality of their work? There's a book. I actually received this quote this morning from somebody. He said, "Jeremiah, you've got to read this book." Um, he said, it's called Laser Focused Coaching. I've not read it, so I can't put my name on it as far as if you should pick it up or not. But based on this quote, I'm going to buy it. It said, "Sometimes coaching is only about the relationship and respecting the client's humanity." And when I used to work in the nonprofit world, I heard a speaker say this: "To be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known." And that's hung with me as a leader, because especially in coaching, because coaching is about deepening the leadership relationship with the individual. And I know people may get uncomfortable with that word love in corporate America, but the reality is that if you're listening to somebody and engaging with somebody and honoring them and respecting them and truly listening, that's part of love. And so those are the three things I would say: curiosity, asking great questions, and truly listening to people in those spirits.
That's really good, Jeremiah, and I don't mind that you use the word love on this podcast. I think we can all love more. What's one thing? This is the penultimate question of the interview. What's one thing a leader who might be listening to this podcast, what can they take away from this conversation and begin doing that thing tomorrow that will make them a better leader?
I'll say it bluntly: shut up for the first 2 minutes of a conversation. Listen, truly listening. If you start with that, the coaching just becomes easy because the listening's intentional and the questions just show up. One thing I hear managers ask me anytime we do a program for them of teaching them how to do this is, "Well, where's the list of questions I need to ask my employees?"
Mm,
Questions live in the listening.
yeah. Shut up.
Yeah.
I love that. Uh, So, Jeremiah, I've loved our conversation. A lot of insights come from it. Our time is coming to an end. How can people continue this conversation with you or Strata Consulting if they want to learn more, want to engage you or talk about an engagement? How do they get in touch with you? What would the first steps of that be?
If they want to, they can call the office, but they can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Jeremiah Shaw on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy person to find. So I'd love to continue that conversation and point people in the right direction, whether it's working with us or just helping point them towards some other resources as well.
Excellent. We'll have the links to your website and LinkedIn in the show notes, and I would certainly encourage our listeners to follow up with you and check out your website and see what you are doing. Jeremiah, thanks for being such a great guest on the podcast today. I've told you this before, but I love the way you approach coaching. I appreciate what you do, and I look forward to continuing my professional relationship with you, and trust that I will learn from you over the coming years and months. So thanks for being here, man. Love you. To my listeners, thanks for listening. Take something away from the conversation, if nothing else, that listen more, shut up. We'll quote Jeremiah. That might be the quote of the week: shut up, and really connect with your people and find out what's important to them, not just professionally, but also where do they want to go in their life? What is important to them more broadly? That's the values-based question that you can pursue as well. So, thanks everyone for listening. Until we talk again, take care of your people. Be a good leader. Be a good teammate. Be a good friend.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.